The location of next year's WWE WrestleMania 41 is still very much up in the air. What's going on, guys? Welcome to a special Friday afternoon mic drop. Just wanted to come up here for a couple of minutes and talk about the WrestleMania chatter that's been going on over the past couple of days. Now, as we know, for the better part of about a year now, we had all heard that Minneapolis, Minnesota was going to be the front runner for WrestleMania 41 to land WrestleMania 41. And as WrestleMania 40 came and went and we still had no announcement of that, rumors are now circulating that they are still trying to figure out the location for WrestleMania 41 next year, and Vegas has reemerged as another potential suitor. So Minneapolis is not a done deal as of yet, even though it really felt like it was. Even word coming out of, Minneapolis, the city meeting that they had where they kind of hinted that they had a big announcement for something that was going to give the city an economic boost, but they didn't really clue us into what that was. A lot of people assumed it was going to be WrestleMania 41, but now it sounds like that's not quite a done deal yet. So it got my juices flowing. It got my excitement level raised because I have really been hoping that WrestleMania 41 is going to come to Las Vegas. I love that city for a wrestling show. I've attended two there now, SummerSlam and Double or Nothing. Both were a blast. Everything is so centrally located. You can just park and walk everywhere you need to be. It would be the perfect venue for a WrestleMania week that has so many things going on, like WrestleCons and conventions and WWE World and Wally Mania and one-man shows and podcasts and live shows and indie shows, everything happening around WrestleMania weekend. And if it was all really close together, that would just, I think, enhance the fan experience, in terms of being able to interact and hang out with people. And as a YouTuber, it would be a great opportunity for me to meet and hang out with a lot of you, as we have done in the past when I've been in Vegas for a show. So I've really been hoping that Vegas is going to be a landing spot for a future WrestleMania and maybe even WrestleMania 41. And not for nothing, to quote Taz, I mean, if you're going to do Rock and Roman Reigns or any sort of main event that involves The Rock, I feel like Vegas is a much better venue for something like that than Minneapolis. Now, nothing against Minnesota. I have family in Minnesota. I used to drive the long way around fucking Lake Michigan all the way up to Minnesota from Michigan to visit family there. My aunt lived there. I had some cousins there. They had a nice house like on a farm on some railroad tracks. I fished in a couple of those lakes. Nothing against Minnesota at all. Okay, I got your back. I'm not really a Vikings fan. I'm more of a Lions fan, obviously. But in terms of the state of Minnesota, the city of Minneapolis, the people who live there, nothing against y'all at all, okay? Has nothing to do with that. I'm just trying to think of the place that would best suit me as a wrestling fan to get a WrestleMania. Now, if you live in Minnesota and you land WrestleMania 41, guess what? I'm going to be thrilled for you because I don't think WrestleMania has been there. Actually, I know they have not. So going to Minneapolis and that beautiful new stadium they have would be great for the city. And if it happens, awesome. But since we have not gotten that announcement yet, and since things do sound like they are still up in the air, I'm kind of holding out hope that it actually might turn out to be Vegas after all. Now, here's what Fightful Select had to say about this yesterday. They had released a report about what they had heard, and I quote, WrestleMania 41 still doesn't have a location announced, which is very unusual to many wrestling fans. Typically, WrestleMania's location is announced at least a year ahead of time, but this time, that's not the case. Fightful has spoken to several sources around the Minnesota government who at times have claimed they were the front runners for the event, were landing the event, and even that they were hoping to announce the event officially soon. However, until an official announcement happens, it's not confirmed. In fact, there are some within WWE that are still pushing for Las Vegas as the home of Mania 41. As noted this week, Nick Khan said that WrestleMania will likely not be returning to an outdoor northeast location after the cold weather associated with this year's show. However, if they are to go through with Minnesota, we're told many options have been discussed. Khan also noted he didn't plan to go head-to-head with the NCAA Final Four, which led some to think perhaps WrestleMania could return to March, where 15 events have been previously held. However, Fightful has learned that the possibility of WrestleMania happening in May has also been broached as well. It's worth noting that US Bank Stadium does have a roof and hosts Minnesota Viking games. WWE have still yet to confirm to us the location of WrestleMania and have repeatedly stressed that the location isn't official until announced. So there's some information in there. And one thing that makes me laugh so much is Nick Khan. Who would have thought that me and Nick Khan would have been soulmates? For those of you who have been watching this channel all the way back since like 2011, 2012, I have always had this issue with outdoor cold weather or just outdoor in general WrestleManias. And prior to WrestleMania 29, on this very channel, when it was in its infancy, I was saying things like WrestleMania will never go to New York. For some reason, MetLife Stadium, that is a shared stadium between two football teams, does not have a roof on it. And I don't understand, when you're in a cold weather city like that, why you would have a stadium so big that can only be utilized for a certain portion of the year. Like when it's warm, you can't have a Taylor Swift concert at MetLife Stadium in January. She'll freeze her titties off. So I always ruled out New York. I also ruled out Soldier Field in Chicago and even Philadelphia. And since 2013, we have now seen 2 WrestleManias in MetLife and now one in Philadelphia. And I always thought as a fan that that was batshit nuts. Has nothing against the cities themselves. The cities are great markets. It's the fact that they have stadiums without a roof on it. And when you have an event as important as WrestleMania that's going to set up your future and is going to be a show that's going to always be, cemented and remembered as one of your Super Bowls, and you're also dealing with pay-per-view companies, and you can't really just delay this. In a sporting event, you can somehow just delay a game, rain delay, weather delay, whatever, you play it the next day. I'm sure WWE would figure out something to do if some sort of catastrophe like that happened, but so much is riding and hinging on WrestleMania happening on the day that it's announced. And if you're setting up a year's worth of storylines and everything to pay off at one event, one thing I would not want to have to worry about is the weather. And we've seen some close calls in Tampa at 37. Remember, that storm blew through and fucked everything up, tore up the set and the sails on the ship and all of that. So I've always been really surprised that they would be willing to take those risks. And it sounds like Nick Khan thinks like me, because after what happened in Philly, I think he probably has the same type of mindset to where, why would we risk that? Why would we risk a weather event fucking up something that's so incredibly important to the company? So I've always believed that WrestleManias either need to be held in stadiums with a roof or in a warm climate, and you just risk the chance of rain. But when you're in the Northeast or a cold weather city, then you're not only risking rain, you're also risking cold and even worse weather, and it's just, I never understood it. So it sounds like Nick Khan is like, nope, no more of that. Sorry. That pretty much is now going to rule out Soldier Field in Chicago, because that's another cold place. And I think that is the best way to do WrestleMania. Nothing against those cities, but if you don't have a roof in the stadium in your city, I don't think you should get a WrestleMania. Nick Khan apparently feels the same way. So that makes me very happy and comfortable as a wrestling fan for future WrestleManias that we're probably not going to have to worry about stupid cold weather or nonsense or anything like that. So that's great. In terms of WrestleMania 41 next year, like they said, it's still up in the air. But for future WrestleManias, now that this is a new era, WrestleMania 40 just happened. It's the Paul Levesque era. Vince McMahon is gone. It's a new WWE. Perhaps moving WrestleMania a little later in the year to May would be a good idea, because then that might open up the door for more cities. So if you want to run the risk of doing a Chicago or a Philly or a New York, at least it's later in the year where the weather is warming up and it probably won't be so cold. By the time you get to mid-May, most of those cities are getting relatively warm. Spring is starting to hit, summer's only a month away, it's starting to happen. So May might actually be a much better time. Or you kick it back earlier and do it in March again. So I could see WWE perhaps moving the date of WrestleMania. I don't know if I'd want to move it like to the end of the year or anywhere crazy like that. But if you bump it a month up or, a month back, I can, as a fan, pretty much live with that. So it'll be interesting to see, what kind of decisions they make regarding WrestleMania, its time, date, and location in the future. And WrestleMania and the Raw after Mania, I don't know how many years, it feels like every single year, runs head to head with the Final Four all the time. So the fact that Nick Khan is conscious of that, wants to keep WrestleMania out of cold weather cities, make sure there's a roof or WrestleMania is protected and safe so you know the show can happen, and keep it away from other stuff like Final Fours and national championships and whatnot. I think that's great. So I am what I said earlier about laughing is I remember when we first got the announcement of Nick Khan coming into the WWE, I was under this assumption, never assume, that WWE was injecting themselves with some corporate poison, and this was some corporate slasher coming into where his only priority is to make sure WWE maximizes its profit. And even though that's a very, very big part of his job, the fact that he cares so much about the fan experience and WrestleMania's doing good numbers and be exciting for the fans is a great surprise. I was thinking he was more of a money guy, just focused on making sure WWE turns a profit, or not turn a profit, but makes as much profit as possible, and the hell with the fans. And he's really anything but. He really seems to have his finger on the pulse of what's smart and what's not. And I appreciate that. And I think Nick Khan and Triple H are making a good 1-2 punch there running this company. So we will see where WrestleMania 41 winds up, but I'm really holding out hope that it's going to be in Las Vegas, because if it's Vegas, like I said, that is the best place for a wrestling show. Allegiant Stadium is right there. All the hotels are right there. Just book a hotel, drive in, park, and you're home free. No need to get back in your car again. Where last year in LA, WrestleCon was downtown and WrestleMania was in Inglewood, and SoFi Stadium, there's nothing around it. There's nowhere to hang out. There's no bars. There's no restaurants. There's no place to mingle. You just go to the arena, and it sucked. I mean, it didn't suck. WrestleMania was awesome, WrestleMania 39, but the experience isn't near as good as it is in Las Vegas when you can just be walking around the streets and be running into people, hey, what's up, what's up, what's up, what's up, that type of thing. And Vegas would just be so perfect for a WrestleMania. So I'm really hoping it's there because I can drive. It's within driving distance and we can go and not have to, spend an arm and a leg on flights and whatnot and go and hang out with all of you guys. So that's what I'm hoping for. I hope we get an announcement that it's going to be Vegas. And sorry, Minnesota. I hope that it's Vegas. But if it does turn out to be Mania 41 in Minnesota, great for Minneapolis. I probably will not go. I'll wait for it to hit Vegas because I feel like Minnesota and Las Vegas will get the next 2 WrestleManias. That's the way it feels. So if Minneapolis gets this one, maybe Vegas gets 42 or vice versa. We will see. But I think that WWE might want to push WrestleMania 42 to Minneapolis if the plan is to have The Rock in the main event, or the working plan is perhaps to have The Rock in the main event of next year's show. That feels like a Vegas, or maybe Miami, or, a city, more close to The Rock, I guess. But The Rock is a big name. Vegas is a big city, big money city, a lot of eyeballs and betting and things like that. Vegas feels like the place for a Rock and Roman Reigns match, or a Rock and Cody match, or anything involving The Rock. What about other cities? Now that Nick Khan has mentioned that WrestleMania will no longer be in a butt-ass cold outdoor stadium, that means we can rule out a few. If that's what WWE is going to do, that means we can rule out Chicago, and we can also rule out New York and Philadelphia. Washington, D.C. probably as well. That city's terrible, plus it'll probably still be pretty cold around WrestleMania time. You can also rule out Denver. I can't see them going to Denver for the same reason. And even though we are not a cold weather city, I think you can rule out San Diego here with Petco Park because baseball season, you can't hold WrestleMania in a baseball stadium, although they did at WrestleMania 19. I don't know how they did that. They got in and out of there between like road games or road trips or whatever. But, the WrestleMania set takes a good week to construct. They're in there for a full week putting that thing together, probably a few days after that, taking it down. And I don't think any baseball team is going to be out of their stadium for long enough, even if they go on a big week-long road trip. I still think that that's not enough time. Correct me if I'm wrong, all you sports fans, but I feel like there's not going to be a team in baseball that will be out of their stadium long enough for WWE to come in, set up WrestleMania, and be out of there before their next homestand starts. So I feel like in my head, you can rule out pretty much all baseball stadiums, but here in San Diego, Petco, I feel like Petco would be better served for SummerSlam or something like that. Although, there's still going to be baseball going on in the summer as well. So I feel like Petco and pretty much any baseball park you could kind of rule out along with some of those cold outdoor cities. So in the U.S., who does that leave? And by the way, another thing that was noted and mentioned from Nick Khan is that WrestleMania, the WWE plans on WrestleManias remaining in the US and Canada for the foreseeable future. So you can rule out the Londons and the Australias and, even the Hawaiis, even though it's in the US, I can't see WrestleMania going to Hawaii. I just don't see it. So I feel like US and Canada are where the WrestleManias are going to remain. So what are the stadiums, cities, and venues that we should be keeping an eye on for future WrestleManias? Number one, obviously, Minnesota, Minneapolis there, and Las Vegas, Allegiant Stadium, that was the host of SummerSlam a couple of years ago and was supposed to be the host of Money in the Bank, and they moved it, remember? So WrestleMania coming to Allegiant Stadium would be amazing. We also have Atlanta. There's a new building in Atlanta. WrestleMania 27 was in Atlanta, so it's been a while since a Mania has been in Hotlanta, so they might go back there. I could totally see that happening. Also, the home of WrestleMania 26 in Arizona would also be a likely landing spot for a future WrestleMania, and that one would make me happy because, like Vegas, I could drive to that. Also, I mentioned the baseball stadium, so, Safeco Field and Houston, where the Astros play. If they can get in and out of there between road trips, then yes. Otherwise, you probably have to rule those out. New Orleans, host of WrestleMania 30 and 34, but now it's going to be probably around 10 years until, until their name starts coming up again. So we might get WrestleMania 44 in New Orleans. So New Orleans, I think, will get another one. Also, Indianapolis. They've got a big roof on their stadium where the Colts play. So I think WrestleMania could definitely come to Indianapolis, even though I don't think that's a great market, in one of the biggest and most bustling cities. I still think they've done a WrestleMania there before, WrestleMania 8. And I think that would be a good spot for it. And I think people would turn out. Centrally located, lots of people. I mean, you could do drive-ins from everywhere. Think about where Indianapolis is. You'd have drive-ins from Chicago and Detroit, Pittsburgh and Philly and New York and, even, Tennessee and the Carolinas and Virginia. Everybody can just converge, and that would probably be a good spot as well. Speaking of my old stomping grounds in North Kakalaki, it's an outdoor stadium. It's not quite as far south as Florida, but Charlotte. Charlotte is another great wrestling town that I think would do great if WrestleMania came there. The only problem is no roof. So if they were to move WrestleMania to May, then I think Charlotte should definitely be a front runner for WrestleMania. You'd have to run the risk of weather, but a WrestleMania in Charlotte, I think, would be badass. That is one I would fly in for. I would go to Charlotte if WrestleMania came there one day, but that's kind of it. Vegas, Minnesota, Atlanta, Arizona, New Orleans, Indianapolis, perhaps Charlotte. You still have Orlando and Miami with the outdoor stadiums in the South. But other than that, I can't think of any other than Texas, too. You got Dallas. Jerry World has hosted already a couple of WrestleManias. Houston has hosted a WrestleMania. So aside from all of those cities mentioned, what am I missing? What's another city that could be a potential host? You got to keep in mind, these need to be decent-sized markets. These can't be out in the middle of BFE. Wyoming cannot get a WrestleMania. I'm sorry. But any sort of city with a pro team, with a football stadium that either has a roof on it or is in warm weather, I think should be up for consideration. It will probably be the landing spot because you have a finite amount of spaces here that you can actually use. So I think all of these cities will start getting repeat WrestleManias. San Francisco is another one. WrestleMania 31 was there, but I didn't love that one because too much of it was in the daylight. WrestleMania 26 was like that too. So that is one negative about being out here on the West Coast, is that wrestling, especially WrestleManias, I believe, in my opinion, look better in the dark. When you can have a lot more lighting and things like that, to where at WrestleMania 31, Sting's entrance just didn't hit. It just didn't hit right because it was all in the daylight and shit. So I feel like that is going to be, we'll have to deal with that when WrestleManias come to these cities, of just having a little bit more brightness in the arena. But in terms of venues, markets, cities, those are the ones that are kind of on our radar now, and really the only ones manageable for a WrestleMania-sized event. I should mention Detroit. Detroit's another one. Detroit had this past year's SummerSlam, but also WrestleManias 3 and 23. So by the time they get to Detroit again, a good amount of time would have passed. So I think Motown should definitely land another WrestleMania. Ford Field has a roof on it, just like the Silverdome did. That's pretty much all of them, So that's kind of your criteria. You either got to be in a warm weather city, and WWE needs to be willing to risk the weather if you don't have a roof, or you need a roof. Those are the only two options it feels like going forward for WrestleMania. So let me know what you think about all this stuff in the comments below. Throw out your suggestions for cities. If you got some wild cards, Cinderellas, something that I didn't maybe think of, let me know down in the comments below and place your bets on where you think WrestleMania 41 will be. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today on this quick little Friday mic drop. Don't forget to join us tomorrow for the podcast, and we will be here Sunday as well, watching and reviewing AEW Dynasty together. Y'all have a good one. Talk to you soon. Peace.